For so many years, 30 years, as long as Google's been around, you would say, "Hey, Google," you would ask it a question. It would then look at the millions of people that asked that question, what the answers were, and whoever had the best answers is what Google gave as the answers. Now AI reads everything on the internet, whether it's true or false, and weights it the exact way. My great-grandmother with dementia can write an article about computer science, and so can someone from MIT. And when AI reads it, it gives it the same weight. Google gave Reddit $60 million to buy, which is wild, right? It's people's opinions. And then everyone takes those opinions as fact. And then more misinformation ends up. And then the next AI goes and finds more and more and more information that's maybe right, maybe wrong. And the problem is when people go and they investigate other companies, they're not even getting the truth of those companies anymore because they're getting about everything that was written as if it's all true. And every answer it gives, Sean, you've used it. Everyone is so ridiculously powerfully written that you would say, that's gotta be true. That's gotta be true. And that's the problem. And I think that's one of the biggest problems I'm having is that it's very hard to disseminate what's fact from fiction now.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Full Battery Media Podcast. I am your host, Sean Trace, and I have an awesome guest with me here today. Can you tell people who you are and what you do?
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me today. My name is Glenn Freesman. I am a father of two, a grandfather of three, and my current business is I own a company called Digital Speaker Agent, and also the beginning of a movement called Two Hands, Two Meals, Two Lives. And that's kind of the one thing that gets me up in the morning. Well, that and my bladder, but every single day, it's a new adventure. And 63 years old, the fourth time I've retired, and the fifth time I've come back. So that's my new venture. To
That's
Digital
awesome.
Speaker Agent. Yep.
That's awesome, man. Well, I want to ask you this: like, what was it that motivated you, to move into this direction?
Well, at 50 years old, I thought I was retiring for the first time because
Yeah.
I'd started working full time at 13 and swore to myself at 13 that I will give up my childhood for my adulthood. And worked all those years. I'd actually pulled it off. And then at 50 years old, things changed and came back to work again. And very successful in my business ventures. And every time I thought I was done, something would drag me back. One of those things was the internet, because I'm older than the internet. I'm older than Google. And then another opportunity and come back as a consultant because I spent 36 years in the mortgage title insurance business. And someone dragged me back in and said, you know every single thing about the front end. Why don't you come run our back end as a working on the servicing end of it, on checking out mortgages. And so now you know end to end, and that would make you a great candidate for any job because you would be an end to end understanding of the entire model. So I came back again, and then at 60, I said, okay, I'm done again. I want to just go enjoy my life. And at 50, I thought, I would be a speaker. Why not? Because I had the same idea about being a speaker, Sean, as everybody else. You show up, they hand you $15,000, you go home.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at all the work that gets done by a speaker about basically sending out resumes, as all speakers do all day long. They find opportunities just like finding a job, and you fill out their paperwork and you send it in. And at 50 years
Mm-hmm.
old, I found myself working, 8 hours a day, filling out 3 of these because it takes that long to find them, repurpose all your material so it works towards a certain opportunity. And I said, well, this is crazy. That is not what I'm going to do. And shelved that, went into the consulting world. And at 60, came back out again. Said, okay, well, now I have 10 more years of experience. It's 13 now to 60. I could be a speaker. And sure, nothing changed. Nothing. And I'm like, how with the internet and with AI and everything else that's going on, how has this not gotten any better? And it just didn't. So I set out to do something that I've never done before, and I am not a huge fan of AI. I was very fortunate. My daughter worked or works for Google. So I was on the original. I saw Bard when it first started, which was Google's original AI, which was built on truth. And I'll go off on a little bit of a tangent here. When Google originally built that, it only knew Google's material from what it already had in its memory banks. It was 2.5 years behind, so you couldn't find new information because it only worked off of what it absolutely knew. And I said, this is an incredible product because no matter what I ask it, it knows the answer. It's giving me the truth, and the power is ridiculous. So I set out building it on Bard, but then Bard never really happened. It ultimately became Gemini after a couple other, different names, and ChatGPT happened, and Claude happens, and Anthropic happens, and Perplexity happens, and the one thing I realized is that the more advanced it became, the more it lost its sense of truth and its sense of value.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I said, well, there's no way I'm building my whole product on this. So I set out to learn Python code, which I've never done in my entire life. But I knew at least if I wrote a program, it would ultimately tell the truth in the answer. So I came back again to write a program for myself that would go out into the internet, find opportunities to speak on resilience and leadership and a movement, starting a movement, finding that sponsorship. And once it found that, to be able to take everything it knew about me from my speaker site URL, from my LinkedIn pages, so what I've written in Facebook and Instagram and wherever else that information lies, and then fill out the paperwork. And then when I began to talk about that, people are like, well, why don't you just go sell that? Because you're a natural person. It's what you do is you create product and then you sell them. I said, well, I really wanted to speak. I said, well, yeah, you can speak, but why not give me this program and give me this program and give me this program? So that was the birth of what was my original company. It was called Speakers Bot. But then that was a one-on-one relationship really using AI because that's how I originally built it. But then the whole idea of this bot became so synonymous with AI that I changed the name to a digital speaker agent. Because Sean, that's basically what it does, is it uses every speaker and it then goes out into the internet for each and every speaker and finds exactly what they speak on. And then the built end, the back end using a patented extension that we built, then fills out their paperwork. So long way around. But again, it came from when you fill gaps for a living, which is what I've done since 13. This was a huge gap, and it still is a huge gap in the speaking industry.
Mhm. Which it's interesting though, but I wanted to do you mind if we pivot a little bit? Because there's a little bit that, as I was researching about you, like, you fascinate me. Like, you came out of retirement and started learning Python. That's wild, man, and built a software company. Like, to me, that's one of the coolest things I've heard in a long time. Like, y some people just see change around them and go, "What am I gonna do?" And they just roll over it. But you embraced it, dove into it. What mindset allowed you to do that, man?
Wow, that's a great question, Sean. I would say it's the mindset of fear and desperation, which is what I was at 13. Right? Family lost the cars, family lost the house, family had no money. Fear and desperation takes over, and something clicks in your head that says, this is never going to happen to me, and I will figure this out. And when that happens at 13 years old, you constantly believe that you could solve any answer and
Mm,
that no one else could possibly be right if they're telling you you're wrong. It is
mm,
literally this power of passion that bleeds, that says, if this is what I want to build and it can get done, then I will just figure it out. And I have a complete belief that there's no way that anybody is ever going to tell me no. And that's a blessing and a curse because you lose a lot of those. You lose friendships, you lose family, you lose things because your belief and conviction is so strong that it's overpowering. People always said to me, it's like being on the wrong side of a fire hose when I talk to you. Like when you
Mhm,
get on your little soapbox, it's ridiculous. But when I'm on that soapbox, that's the power of what I believe in.
mhm,
So when I came back, I started using AI. I was doing this was right before no code happened. And Sean, I would go in and I would ask AI the questions, and I was using ChatGPT at the time, and it would go through the questions, and then I would push back and would say, "Oh no, you're right. Good idea you push back on that because I'm going to change my mind." And then I said, "Okay, well, let me ask you again." And then it said, "Well, let me change my mind." I'm like, "Well, how am I ever going to trust that you ever told me the truth if every time I
mhm,
say something back to you, you tell me, 'Oh, you're so handsome and so smart. I'm just going to change my mind.'"
mhm,
And I s and finally, I remember saying to ChatGPT, I said, "People are putting $1 trillion into you. Like, your IPO is worth $1 trillion and Anthropic is $1 trillion. How can I be smarter than you?" And that's where I began with Python. When I felt the need, Sean, to take what I wrote and what I questioned in ChatGPT, I would ask the exact same question in Perplexity and the exact same question in Claude, and then have them fight with each other until they came up with an answer. So my thing goes back to that lizard at 13 saying, I lived on 6 cases of tuna fish with my mother and father in our house, and there's nothing more you could ever take from me that I haven't already lost, right? My mother died at 49 years old, my sister died at 34, my brother died at 43. There's nothing you can take from me. I have nothing more you could possibly win and take in order to beat me in anything. So that becomes a mindset that's almost impossible to live in and almost impossible to ignore. I'm not wishing this on anybody, but if you can go back and realize where it all started, a 13-year-old is not supposed to go out and sell 500,000 soft pretzels to save a family. It's not our job at 13. But when it happens and you don't realize the again, the blessing and the curse of it happening, no one really points it out until it's too late. I mean, I literally sold 500,000 pretzels, and the quick story was, a guy who was 24 years older than me, who I met at a Y playing basketball, you know, he was the pretzel vendor. And about 30 days into it, when he knew we were losing the house, when I told him, he said, "What can I do?" And I said, "Listen, I need $13,500 today to save the house, to save the cars, and get my parents out of bankruptcy, and I'll pay you back with interest." And he gave a 13-year-old that money. And I swore that day I will pay that forward for the rest of my life. And I will make sure that anyone who needs anything, I will just do it because somebody did it for me. And I don't know, it was something I actually did. And it's been a driving
yeah.
force in my entire life, my entire life.
I think there's a magic in paying it forward. I think there's a magic in recognizing that when you have had something done for you and then you shift it forward, it's like a magic to that, man. I was sitting there I was flying back and I had all these pineapple cakes. I bought all these pineapple cakes that I took with me from Vietnam to the US to give to people. Delicious pineapple cakes, and I was like, gonna share them, but then I didn't the person I was gonna give them to didn't show up, and I started eating them, and that was not what I wanted to do. So I was like, "You know what? Uh, I want to make sure that I am not eating all these, so what can I do?" I decided to share them with the people around me. So I look around, and next to me, there are these young guys, and I was like, "Hey, guys, you want some pineapple cakes?" And they were like, "Dude, sure." And they enjoyed the pineapple cakes, loved them, and moved on, right? Just it was whatever. Later on, I get on the airplane, an hour later, those guys are not there. I am in a different place. And what's interesting is that Next to me, a guy turns to me, pulls out a piece of gum, and is like, "Hey, man, you want some gum?" And I was like, "Thanks." I don't know what that magic is that makes people pass things around, but there's something, man. There's something like if you push things out there, there's some good that will come from it. And maybe it's not all woo woo, but maybe it's just you're that person who kind of you like inspires other people for that. I don't know. But I want to ask you because you've had a long career doing lots of different things. And any of your beliefs about business and success changed over that time?
Every one of them. Yeah, every one of them. Yeah. I think that's one of the most important things is that fluidity. You know, that
Mhm.
ability to say, for instance, when I started Digital Speaker Agent, there are 180,000 opportunities a year to speak in America.
Mm,
Now, granted, two-thirds of them do not pay, according
mhm.
to what a speaker believes is pay. A good speaker coaches, they consult, they wrote a book, they have a blog, they're a podcast host. They're making their money doing something else besides speaking. Okay. So my belief was, well, I have to get all of those opportunities in my pond. So when speakers come to fish in my pond and they say, hey, I speak on leadership and development in HR, that I would already have those opportunities in my pond so they could fish and then get those opportunities. And I spent 7 months building that pond and fighting with developers and hiring them and firing them from all over the world and couldn't get it done. Because again, my belief was I feel I'm right 95% of the time because I've beat it up so many times in my head that how could I possibly be wrong? And that's what saved me at 13. And I was successful, for 47 years with that business model in my head. So, uh, dealing with it, my 20th, vendor building me this thing, and he says, "It can't get done. It just can't." And I said, "All right, well, here's the deal. Either we're gonna figure this out or I'm closing the company because I'm tired of I can't keep." It's the definition of insanity. I keep going back to the same question, looking for a different answer, and everyone keeps giving it to me. Why can't I hear it? And at that moment, not at that moment, but over that night where I was sleeping, I saw the answer was if a speaker joins on January 1st, he does not care there's 180,000 fish in that pond. He cares that when he throws his net in or his hook in, that the 5 opportunities that he matches as a speaker will be in that pond, which means all I need is a little tiny pond the size of a bucket for that speaker to go dip his net in and pull out 5 opportunities. I'm like, huh, maybe that's the answer. Maybe instead of building a pond with 180,000 fish, I have to find a bucket with 5 fish in it. So when Sean comes as a podcast host who now has leadership qualities, has speaking qualities, understands how to run a room, understands how to deal with a conversation, understands how to think on his feet, and people in the world will hire Sean. Huh, that's really the answer. So I scrapped 7 months worth of work just like that and said, new direction. Now, again, that's another crossroads. Right? It'd been very easy to say, you know what? I failed before, I'll fail again. But my failures were always cost me way less than my wins won me. So I'm good. I'm good. But the thing that drives me was this movement that sits behind everything that I do, which is this two hands, two meals, two lives movement. That really is the reason that, again, I think I'm here. I think the reason I've fought through these 63 years is I'm trying to do something now that's impossible, but I've done everything in my life that's impossible. This one's kind of overpowering and it's very big and it's very in its infancy still, but it's allowing me to wake up every day with purpose, with a drive. And it ties in at everything that I've ever done. It ties in paying it forward. It ties in giving aid without asking. It ties in my first TED Talk, my second TED Talk. What went on in India? What went on with someone giving us this money at 13 years old, and this lifelong dream to pay it forward. So the fluidity of what I do, and the fact that I believe that they're all stepping stones. Somewhere along the line, all these things absolutely intertwined. Everything that I'm talking about right now, from the movement to digital speaker agent to selling 500,000 soft pretzels, are all the same story. It's just turn the page, Bob Seger. It turned the page, next chapter.
So
So
interesting, man. And it's one of the things too is like you found your why, and it was a core why, to help people. And everything else is built around that. It's like if you go out and do something, you can do so many things if you have that core why. But a lot of people have a hard time figuring out that why for themselves. What was it that allowed you to really figure out your why and have the clarity on that?
the promise I made to myself at 13, that this complete stranger in 30 days ultimately changed 4 generations, because it changed me immediately. And I got to spend 6 years with a street smart Philadelphia soft pretzel vendor. The stories that you learn and the life that you learn from that, living on the street like that and selling on the
Mhm,
street, is just overpowering.
mhm,
I gave that money directly to my parents, who got out of bankruptcy. My father got another job. My mother, got 8 more years of being healthy from the cancer. So it changed
mm,
my generation, changed theirs, then changed my kids when I had them, because they grew up in a different atmosphere than I grew up in. And now my kids are having kids.
mhm.
So one act of kindness changed 4 generations in literally 5 seconds when he handed me the money. A lot of people would do different things with that money. I happen to, not only did he give me the money, but he taught me money. He said, listen, the first thing I control the money. I control the way you pay me back. I said, I don't care what you control. Just take the money back. And what he did with that money and his lessons that he taught me was very valuable, and I never forgot them. I still eat dinner with him. We still meet once a month when I'm in America. So it's very interesting that if you take that moment in time and multiply it forward, and I'm still not happy, and that's what drives me insane. At 13 years old, when all that happened, I said, I will give up my child for my adulthood. And my dream was literally to be on an island under a palm tree and listen to the ocean and doing nothing, until I'm sitting in Panama under a palm tree, listening to the ocean, doing nothing. I'm like, this is not cutting it for me. I want to get back to the US, because the speaking opportunities in the US, they're not in Panama. When you travel on an 11-pound golden doodle, it's amazing, but you can't just get on and off airplanes internationally. The amount of paperwork to get on and off an airplane is ridiculous. If I'm on a place like India, where it's a high rabies place, it takes months, and proofs and everything else. So, I have to get back to where I'm at so I can continue to be able to speak on what I want to speak on, because that's really the catalyst, is back to digital speaker agent. And then having all the speakers that join digital speaker agent also become part of the movement, because it's that powerful and so easy. It's such an easy vehicle. The movement is really, again, the why on that movement goes back to aid without asking. That was the name of my first TED Talk. That's what Mitch did for me. That's a story of selling the pretzels. It's a story of my lifetime then. And, the last one I did was Two Hands, Two Meals, Two Lives. And it's really the movement that I want to actually, I want to flick that pebble at the top of the mountain and see and watch it grow. And it's a hell of a why. I mean, it's a hell of a reason to wake up every day. And it's so much bigger than me that, you know, it's going to take a lot of other people to help me do what I'm doing.
How do you think that people can go about finding their why? What is the thing that people should be doing to figure out their why, to figure out the thing that is going to really validate the world with their presence?
I would ask you, Sean, how many people want to validate their world with their presence? Or how many
I don't
people
know,
just
man.
want to look in the mirror and say, well, I see one person, right? I was told my entire life that person in the mirror is the only one you have to answer to. And as long as
Right.
that person's happy, I think you've just discounted 99% of the people in the world who could not care less about their why for somebody else. I think the people
Right.
who care about their why for someone else are happen to be, I don't know if they're unicorns, if they're crazy. I haven't decided yet. Okay, but because every psychiatrist will tell me you can't find happiness by making other people happy. That's not your job. Your job is not to make other people happy. And I said, but someone did that for me and it became what I'm passionate about. Yeah, but what are you going to do when you can no longer make people happy? Like, I don't know, and that's when the why becomes difficult. When you've dedicated your life to other people's happiness and you've done it and you've succeeded at it. And now I'm at a point right now where I'm kind of in that crossroads again, because without actually starting this movement and actually getting it started, I'm really at a stalled spot for the first time in 63 years. The other things that making people happy they were easy. You know, getting people to sign their mortgages as a title insurance guy, just do the right thing on every settlement sheet. If I saw that there was an injustice going on that settlement sheet, to stand up and say to these people, I will take care of this for you. You will not be paying this at closing. This is a ripoff at closing. I will do that. I will fight that establishment for you constantly. And I did. So I got wins every day, but they were easy for me. What would you do for somebody, Sean, if they didn't even know it could get done, but you knew with who you knew and what you knew and what they knew that you could get it accomplished without any expectation of a return? Okay, that's what I live for every day, and I pulled that off literally for, like I said, 43 years. And then I picked this new why, which is gigantic. And I don't know, it's like a gambler. I keep gambling on my new why. It keeps going back to my original why of I know that one person can make the difference in 4 generations. How do I make that same difference with anybody who ever attended any conference in the world? To give you an idea what I'm talking about, if you don't mind, the movement. Have you ever been to a conference anywhere, where, a speaker comes in and they have breakfast and you watch the keynote, or they do an early morning breakout session, and then you sit in a couple of little breakout rooms, and then you go out for lunch and everyone eats lunch together. And after lunch, you go on to the next session. And right before
I've
dinner,
been there. Yeah.
okay.
I've been to one of those. I've been to one of those, yeah.
Right. So what happens in that is I come in there as a speaker and there's 1,000 people that are in that conference. In the main room for the main speaker, then maybe all 1,000 of them show up. Then there's all the little breakout rooms. There's all the panel discussions and everything goes on all day long. What goes on, however, that no one really sees is that they serve breakfast. They buy breakfast for 1,000 people, and then 700 people show up for breakfast. Well, by law, at the end of the day, in the entire world, by law, you have to throw out that food because it's no longer good. It can't be served the next time because it's already old. It's already an hour and a half late. Okay. Then the people go back out, they do their thing, they come back for lunch, same thing. Dinner, same thing. And I've watched this happen way too many times to not think, well, why are we not doing something with that food? And everyone else walked by it. And I said, well, wait a minute. If I bring in Meals for Wheels or Pay It Forward or Robin Hood or any of the local organizations and say, we have a breakout session at 8:30 in the morning. Breakfast is served until 8:30. At 8:35, I need you to be at those front doors. And part of every attendee's information packet is a QR code that explains what two meals, two hands, two lives does. And it basically takes food and redistributes it before it becomes trash. And people walk down the hallway, they grab their 2 meals with their 2 hands, which are either already prepackaged with the hotel's name on it, with the speaker's name on it, with the sponsor's name on it, whoever. They walk over, they go click. Just did 2 meals, 2 lives from the Holiday Inn at Vancouver. Click. Just did 2 meals, 2 lives, made a difference in Ontario, in India, in America, wherever. They name the conference, they click it, and the hashtag begins. We do that breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a 3-day event. We could feed 1,000 people, and it's all food that would have normally been just thrown in the trash. It costs nobody a thing because the association already paid for it. The hotel already made it. The sponsor will gladly put their name on an 8-ounce takeaway container. The people will absolutely come pick up the food from all those organizations because it's what they do anyway as that organization. And everybody from the hotel, the association, the meeting planner, the speaker, and the attendees, and the people in the community, it's the perfect corporate sustainability program, the perfect CSR program. So imagine doing that 1,000 times. There's 180,000 opportunities a year just in America. That's what I am attempting to put together now.
One of the things that I think is important as a father of a child of a daughter is that we have to believe that we can make a difference. We have to believe that we can make a difference, and that's one of the things I tell her every day is that it's the biggest problem that someone can believe, or the bad thing they can believe, is that what they are able to do won't change things. And they just sit there and they let life go the way it goes. They let the world go the way it goes. They see bad things happening and they go, yeah, that doesn't affect me. I don't need to do anything. I saw this guy, uh and it was down the alley from my house. And the guy had his hand around the woman's throat, and double hands pushing her up against the wall. And I I was like, "Nope. Just nope. That ain't happening. Not with me standing here." I walked up and I was like, "You know what? Hands off." And people around were like, "It's okay, it's okay. It's his wife." I was like, "Doesn't fucking matter. I'm sorry for that.
Sure.
Sorry for swearing. Doesn't fucking matter who it is, man.
Right.
That's not cool." And people were like, "But it was wild the number of people around me that said, just let it be. Just let it be. Just leave it be. You might be stirring up things. You might cause a problem. You might get," and I was like, if that's the problem that I get, that's the problem I get. But it's a good problem to have. If that's where, if that's the thing that I have to, to do to make this world a better place, then so be it. And if I have to fight more battles after that, I will fight more battles after that. And I might win, but I might lose. And if I lose, at least I lost fighting the right battles. But so many people aren't even willing to step up to fight the battles. So many people aren't even willing to step up and do something. And I think that, like, one of the things too, that, like, we are surrounded by all these tools, by all this stuff, and people are like, the world's changing. You know what? The world's the same. It is still full of people. It is still full of people that are seeking love, that are seeking friendship, that are seeking happiness, that are seeking food, that are seeking shelter, that are seeking safety, that are seeking validation. And it's just the label. Like, you go to Pompeii, where Vesuvius erupted, a city that was bustling. And until that morning, everyone thought everything was okay. And you go and you look at those outlines of the bodies that were there, and they were holding each other. Husbands and wives, parents, children, pups, and they all thought it was going to be normal. If you think that the world is just forever the way it's going to be, I mean, they lived the same way we did. And yet things change, but you can still have an impact. You can still step up and make a change, because throughout time, people have wanted the same things. Certainly there's little things that change, but if you are the person that can be an agent of change, you can be a catalyst for change. You can be the person who says, you know what? There have been those people, that stepped up. The Rosa Parks, I was remembering, one of my, I think it was my great grandma on my dad's side, my mom's side, was a suffragette person who said we need the right to vote, and that's crazy to think about. 100-something years ago, women couldn't even participate in government. Like, that's wild. But there were people who said, this ain't right. We need to make a change. And thank God for those people. And you need to be one of those people. We need people to step away from the device, to step away from all of these things, or maybe don't step away from it, but learn to use it. Learn to empower other people with what you're doing. And that's what I'm trying to do. Speak up, say something, and wake people up. But you can only do that if you wake yourself up.
Right. Yeah, well said. That's well said.
How how do you think that we can inspire people to wake up, to see the world needs you?
I've always I've always believed it's just by doing it and attract and being a connector, attracting the people. You know, you got to attract. Again, it goes back to the look. When I was in India, every single meal I ate, I took 2 meals with me, no matter where I was. Now in India, you can be a big shot because it's $1.25 to buy dinner. You know, it's easy. But when I was at a buffets, you know, the hotel I was at, you know, I had buffet breakfast every morning. It became such a thing that, you know, other people are going, why is he taking food from the buffet? Why is he taking takeout? And they
Mhm,
say, oh, well, this is what he's doing. And you watch more and more and more people do it. Like, wow,
mhm,
there's like, that's power in that. The hotel met with me and said, I understand you're taking food every day. I said, yeah. They said, what are you doing with it? As I'm walking into the Uber driver, the guy who opened my door every day, the guy who just walking down the street, the people in the village. You know, people who are just under me, they can just enjoy it. And they're like, wow, that's a fascinating thing that you're doing. As an American, especially coming here, like, what made you want to do that? I said, it's like the obvious to me. You're throwing out the food anyway. So why aren't we doing this? And you watch that, I guess it's like, I want to be the light bulb that attracted the moths. You know, they all
mhm.
came to light, right? And said, wow, what are you doing? And the whole idea of bringing this to a speaker was it's not my 2 hands trying to feed 2 people, and I'm not looking to feed world hunger. But I can tell you, Sean, if
Yeah.
someone showed up with food from the Radisson when I was 13 years old while we were eating tuna fish, it would have been gigantic for my family. Just to be seen, just to know that someone was doing it, right? And made that
Mhm.
change in that one muffin, right? Their one pineapple cake, right? Makes a
Mhm.
difference. So the whole idea of being going through the speakers is that 1,000 people can get fed, but let's say that 300 people in the audience would feel the power of walking and just being a part of something. So what's a fascinating study is that, remember ALS, the Ice Bucket Challenge?
Yeah, but
126 million people in the world dumped ice bucket of water on their head just to be part of something bigger. So to me, they should have 1 billion people that could ultimately take food from one spot and deliver it 10 feet to somewhere else, or go out into the world and do it the way I like to do it and feel that love. That it's not, look, when I was handing out food to somebody in a village, the look that they gave me back was way more than the look I think I was giving them. Like, you think you're giving them something, but what they gave me back each time was ridiculously powerful. And I think that that's how you attract people. Unfortunately, in today's world, it's so difficult because there's so much scamming and there's so much negativity and there's so much strife and hatred and just the negativity is ridiculous that it's hard that when you're out there trying to do something right, everyone thinks you're just another one.
yeah, right?
And that's what that to me, that's the hardest thing about doing what I'm doing. Is it should be so simple to walk into a hotel and say, "Listen, for every meeting that you ever do here, let me know when you're doing it, and I will set up the food trucks to be here and give you the signage and give you the thing, and I'll come and let people know in a 15-minute little presentation while you're doing these anyway, what you're doing for your local community." Well, we have to run that by the board of directors, and the attorneys need to get involved, and what happens if somebody gets sick and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're thinking too hard. I said, I, as a consumer, can walk into your hotel at any time, take whatever I want out of it, and give it to whoever I want. And no one on the street can sue me for that. As long as I took my 2 hands and fed those 2 people, you're off the hook. So, you know, I think that's the difference of what Mitch did for me 50 years ago was wholesome and easy. And he handed me the money and I did what was right with it. And, you know, I've done great things with it. But I think it's much more difficult today. And Sean, I'm going to circle back to, and with AI doing what AI is doing, my fear is, and I've never dealt with fear in my entire life. I've never feared anything, literally. But my fear with AI right now is that we are losing our source of truth. For so many years, 30 years, as long as Google's been around, you would say, "Hey, Google," you would ask it a question. It would then look at the millions of people that asked that question, what the answers were, and whoever had the best answers is what Google gave as the answers. Now AI reads everything on the internet, whether it's true or false, and weights it the exact way. My great grandmother with dementia can write an article about computer science, and so can someone from MIT. And when AI reads it, it gives it the same weight. Google gave Reddit $60 million
Which is
to buy,
wild.
which is wild, right? It's people's opinions. And then everyone takes those opinions as fact. And then more misinformation ends up. And then the next AI goes and finds more and more and more information that's maybe right, maybe wrong. And the problem is when people go and they investigate other companies, they're not even getting the truth of those companies anymore because they're getting about everything that was written as if it's all true. And every answer it gives, Sean, you've used it. Everyone is so ridiculously powerfully written that you would say, that's gotta be true. That's gotta be true. And that's the problem. And I think that's one of the biggest problems I'm having is that it's very hard to disseminate what's fact from fiction now. And I think it's gonna get worse and worse, and my fear ultimately is we have no Encyclopedia Britannica that I grew up with, that when every little kid that was asked to write a paper went to the library, they got the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that was the answer, right? The cliff notes were the answer, right? The books were the answer. There was only one book, and that was the book, right? I grew up with Dr. Spock, right? Everyone in my generation who had kids, we read Dr. Spock, and that was how you raised your kids. Now everyone's an influencer, everyone has an opinion, and every one of those opinions are out on the internet giving the exact same weight to the people who are giving us the answers, which is Anthropic and ChatGPT and Gemini, Perplexity and Gronk and all the other ones that are all reading the same mass-produced answers that it can't decide what's real. So I know that's not where we wanted to go, but it's yeah, it's scary for me that I don't know if we lose that source of truth, Sean, how will you ever know if the answer how are your grandkids, where are they gonna find the truth? We've gotten rid of our books. Everything's in the cloud. Every answer's in the cloud, and the cloud is basically storming because it doesn't right, there's an asteroid war going on in its clouds because it doesn't know truth from lies. And it's the way they're written. It's the way those algorithms are written. I challenge every person that ever listens to this, ask the same question to any of the large learning models that you use and ask it 6 different ways, and you will get 7 different answers. And every time you push back, it will change its answer. The problem is that people ask that thing one time, it gives the answer, and then that is their new truth. Look, this happened with the news, John, right? Years ago, I knew if you were a Democrat or Republican, whether you watched Fox or CNN. I didn't have to ask you what political party you followed. I just had to ask you why you watched your news. So now if Fox and CNN and CNBC and then ABC, NBC, CBS, and 5,000 other news outlets and every other person that ever became a reporter is now spewing the truth, and then someone asks AI, what is the answer to this question? What are we going to do? Where's that answer lie for your grandkids? I don't know. And that's almost something that numbs me because it was always easy to do the right thing. Now, nothing I ever tried to do was this grandiose, but it shouldn't be this hard to do something good.
It's powerful, man. Well, I want to ask where you have a mission and where can people go to find out more about you and what you do?
Well, uh, GlennFreesman.com is where my website sits for the mission, for the movement. A digital speaker agent is the name of my uh, speaking company because, again, the idea of that was that every speaker that ever joined Digital Speaker Agent, I get them on stages, or I get them the opportunity to get on stage by finding the opportunities, helping them fill out the documentation. Like I said in the very beginning, that's a 2.5 hour job per opportunity. I've cut that down to 10 minutes. So every morning a speaker wakes up, they have the opportunity sitting in their dashboard, they accept it, they go to the extension that we built, and they fill out the paperwork with the source of truth that's been built by them and does not go out into the internet to make up facts about them. It's only built on what they do. So my company that I'm currently doing, Two Hands, Two Meals, Two Lives is the movement. That's all under GlennFreesman.com. I speak on the power of passion, which is started at 13. It's what I'm passionate about. It's whatever it is. And I believe we can bring this passion to any boardroom in America and I can sell anything because I believe it. And yeah, that passion is where that's where it lies. And then, always get to me at any one of those email addresses or LinkedIn, Glenn Freeman or LinkedIn. And I love to talk about anything. And I like to surround myself with people, as my father told me, who are smarter than me. I'm only good
Hmm.
at what I'm good at. I need
Right.
someone that can come and give me direction and to do a lot of the things that I'm trying to do because I'm only one person and I'm trying to take on. It's like I have that little tiny slingshot, but the world became way bigger than Goliath at this point.